We're going to go to Nour Odeh. She's joining us from the Jordanian capital, Amman, and that's because the Israeli government's banned Al Jazeera from reporting in the occupied West Bank and from inside Israel. You're across what's happening inside Israel with regard to the stories that are coming out there. What are you hearing about the possibility of that Yahya Sinwar may have been killed, or yet we have to stress at this point it is not confirmed?
As you said, these reports are not confirmed, but in the past few minutes, about half hour or less, we received a statement from the Israeli army and intelligence services saying that they had targeted a building and that 3 Hamas figures were killed, that they were verifying whether one of them was in fact the Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Now, of course, Mr. Sinwar was elected as the leader of the Hamas movement after Israel assassinated Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran earlier in the year. And so this assassination, if confirmed, and we have to stress there is absolutely no confirmation, we have not heard from Hamas, and even the Israeli military sources say that it could take hours for them to confirm from their end whether that assassination was actually successful. But if that is correct, this would be the second head of the Hamas movement killed just during this war. Of course, Israel had already assassinated previously the leader and founder of Hamas, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, earlier in Gaza in 2004.
In the meantime, the Israeli military carrying on a succession of attacks, particularly on northern Gaza. This is into the 13th day of the siege of the Jabalia refugee camp. What is coming out from Israel with regards to those attacks?
Very little, really. What we do see from the Israeli media and from Israeli statements is a messaging that has to do with, we got the message from the international community, we're working on getting food assistance, allowing food assistance into northern Gaza. But as you know, our colleagues on the ground there are saying and confirming, no food has been allowed into northern Gaza as of yet. Of course, we've been covering those horrific pictures coming out of Jabalia and the shelter that came under an Israeli airstrike, killing up to 22 people. Very little focus on that, but right now, wall to wall, Israeli media is relying on that one single unconfirmed statement of possibly the assassination of the Hamas leader. He is, of course, at the center of everything that's been happening in the past year. It was his voice that announced Hamas' responsibility for the October 7 attack, that ushered in a very different, very new era for Hamas as a whole and for Palestine and the region at large. It was his voice and his command that said that he would release the Israeli captives if Israel releases all Palestinian captives, and if it, lifts its hand off of the occupied West Bank, specifically Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. So targeting that figure has been at the center of the Israeli rhetoric, one of the signs perhaps that Israel would use to signal victory in an area where it has not been able to conclusively say that it really had degraded Hamas or been able to, not allow it to function or fight back Israeli troops. In fact, even in Jabalia, we've been reporting and seeing clashes between Israeli forces and Hamas fighters and fighters from other factions. We've seen reports of Israeli soldiers being injured and at least one being killed in the past 2 weeks. So that possible confirmation of assassination would go a long way to boost Netanyahu, at least among the right-wing circles.
Nour Odeh in Amman there, thank you very much indeed. I want to go to Ori Goldberg. He's an Israeli political commentator. He's joining us now from Tel Aviv. So thank you very much indeed for being with us. It feels slightly unusual for the Israeli military to release a statement saying that they're looking into the possibility that Yahya Sinwar may have been killed, but the identity cannot be confirmed. It does feel like rather a vague statement for the military to make at this stage. How confident, in your experience, do you think the military is in what it may have feel that it has achieved by making these statements?
Apparently growing in confidence, because as we speak, As you've just spoken to your correspondent in Amman, I've received push notices on my iPhone constantly using adjectives that describe greater and greater certainty. The military is confident. The military is confident with high probability. Apparently, they found a lot of cash on the bodies of the 3 men who died. So I think the Israeli military, I think it was leaked, but I think the Israeli military feels like it got Sinwar. And I have to say that that might be the reason, intelligence that Sinwar is there. As far as Israel is concerned, that might be a justification for the relentless attacks and strikes that Israel has been carrying out over the next day or two.
So just to be clear about in what you're saying in terms of the timeline, there's no indication that this may have been something that has happened recently because, as you were referring to, it may have been something that the Israeli military has sought some sort of clarification for, therefore the attack may have happened at some point in the past.
This is Israeli doctrine as it's being established in real time. We are going after the quote-unquote bad guys. The fact that these bad guys are there's an infinite quantity of them and that the list is being produced by algorithm is of no matter. We are assassinating these bad guys. If anybody else gets in the way, that's their problem and the bad guys' responsibility. That's what Israel's been doing in Gaza. That's what Israel's been doing in Lebanon. The justification for all of Israel's crimes is there were military operatives in the vicinity, so we bombed. We're very sorry for the civilian casualties. This happens.
In terms of the methods that the Israeli military would use in order to try and identify the bodies, one would imagine that this has happened in an area where there is a significant enough Israeli military presence on the ground to be able to get troops in, to be able to identify the bodies of those who've been found. Does that give us any sort of indication about where this attack may have happened?
Not necessarily. Israel has a lot of information on Sinwar. As your correspondent mentioned, he was in an Israeli jail. So I think it's not all that difficult to identify him. I think that as far as Israel is concerned, if Sinwar is dead, that is a very meaningful event. So they don't want to notify officially until they're 105% sure. If Israel has managed to kill Yahya Sinwar, that might be the only event on the ground that could potentially get Israel to stop decimating Gaza. That is the symbolic achievement Israel has been looking for.
I wanted to ask you about that because there's been a lot of speculation about what Israel's end game, for want of a better phrase, would be, what they would regard as a point at which they would be able to draw a line, as it were, under what is happening in Gaza. In the event that it is proved that Yahya Sinwar has been killed, would that constitute a line at which Israel would then stop the level of bombardment that it has in Gaza, do you think?
I would assume that it would. I know that a lot of people consider what's happening in northern Gaza now as Israel carrying out the general's plan, the island plan, of emptying northern Gaza and then taking it over and settling it. I don't think that's the case. I think Israel has been fighting in Gaza ultimately without any sort of clear plan, except kill as many Hamas operatives as possible and destroy as much of the city as possible. I think Israel, at least the Israeli leadership, is looking for a reason to stop. The death of Sinwar, Israeli leaders have repeatedly said that assassinating the leadership, getting to the ones who are worthy of death because they planned October 7th, is the ultimate justification for Israel's actions. Sinwar is the most senior planner and executor of October 7th. If they manage to do that, that might be enough to get Israel to stop even for a little bit.
Ori Goldberg, we appreciate you being with us on Al Jazeera, so thank you very much indeed. And obviously, if we find out any more information about the possibility that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has been killed in an Israeli action, we will, of course, bring that information to you. But at the moment, we should stress that even the Israeli military says that it has not been possible to identify the body yet, and we will get more information and bring it to you as soon as we can.